We have lost sight of what makes classic classic. Question mark. Mad season show. I guess there's a lot to say. We'll check it out.
People have the strange tendency to yearn for what they don't have. And when they have it, instead of being content, their attention is instead focused on the next thing that they don't have. This can be true with anything.
Grass is green on the other side.
Jobs, relationships, and perhaps more important than all that stupid crap, World of Warcraft, where over time, as RPG elements and the social fabric are lost on the sacrificial altar of convenience, people yearn for the good old days where you had to earn your levels and you had to talk to people and the focus is on the journey, not the destination. But maybe just one level boost is okay. And, maybe the ability to buy endgame progression. Told you so, by the way. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode where we're in this never-ending, repeating purgatory that everyone is aware of, yet are still somehow powerless to stop it. Except, instead of some profound commentary on the nature of life, it's about a 20-year-old MMORPG. Which brings us to the question, have we lost sight of what makes classic classic? This is a video by Willie, a couple months old at this point, so I'm a little late to the party here, but I thought it may be timely as the latest version of Vanilla, the Season of Discovery, has sort of been struggling quite a bit, and a lot of people are saying it's because we've gotten too far from Vanilla and sort of the retail design philosophy has invaded into Season of Discovery. So I'm curious to what he has to say. I love Willie.
Willie's a cool guy.
Not the anatomy.
I don't know if I've seen this.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Let's see what he has to say.
Later this year, Classic WoW will turn 5 years old. Can you imagine going back to day one of its release and telling someone where the game will be out right now? Yeah, so turns out we are going to be playing Cataclysm Classic eventually. You'd get laughed at by many. Back then, everything was so heavily no changes. We want the original hardcore MMO experience.
It's so funny how the turntables, for those of you who were around during the 2019 launch, you may remember the no changes movement. As Blizzard was recreating their game, every single thing would be put under this insane scrutiny. Like literally, even if the shadows were slightly different, there'd be a Reddit thread or two. It even got to the point to where they simulated lag through spell batching. In the game's original release, due to technical limitations, actions performed by the players would be sent to the server in batches, and because of this, you could have weird things happen like mages sheeping each other, rogues gouging each other, and so on. And the window was large enough to where...
As a PvP player, I'd say having leeway and batching definitely bothered me a little bit. Took a while to get used to. For the whole hashtag no changes, for the 2019 launch, I think that's fine. But going forward, I don't mind having a little bit of quality of life. Not saying give everything free, because, we like grinding, but some quality of life, I don't mind that. So a little bit of change is fine for me.
Could sort of strategize around it if you're really good. And Classic was remade, from what I recall, on the Legion engine in 2016, so having improved their technology and infrastructure since then, they had to artificially program in this lag. And
yeah, leeway for kiting.
We're excited.
Or getting restealth.
It may sound ridiculous,
or dead zoning.
All of it just came from mistrust. At this point, the retail version of the game was BFA, and as you would imagine, many had become really jaded with it. They felt like the developers were really out of touch. So the players were sort of treating Blizzard like Dee Dee from Dexter's Lab. The best thing you can do is to not touch anything and follow the original design philosophy to a T. And please God, no microtransactions. Told you so, by the way. And it's actually funny, and I made a video about this, but aside from the mistrust, part of the reason why people wanted no changes was in hopes to recreate the original 2004 experience as closely as possible.
Chad, have you guys played the 2018-2019 relaunch of Classic WoW? I feel like that was very similar to the relaunch. There was a crap ton of people back. Everyone was leveling together. We were having server shutdown because there was so many people. I don't know if it was like the exact same experience, but it was pretty similar, I'd say. It wasn't bad. I thought that relaunch was probably one of the best relaunches they've done. Not in terms of like waiting 5 hours to get in and then you get kicked out. Random crash happens and you have to wait 5 hours again. Not that part, but just like the playthrough itself was fun. I had a lot of fun. Yeah.
And this was predictably misguided, as it didn't account for the evolution of the player base and the game being solved from it being run on private servers for the past 15 years. I think the biggest example most would agree on would be the world buff meta. Obviously, in 2004 to 07 culture, people didn't really know about these to the extent that they do
No,
today.
this was just, I've said it many times. This is a culture that private servers made upon. Back when I played on a good raid day, we had maybe one buff or two. We never came with fully stacked world buff. I don't think a lot of people knew about this or experimented on it. But since private servers been playing for 20 years straight, yeah, they cheese a lot of the stuff. And when people say world buff makes classic, I don't know about that, man. I feel like you can still have a lot of fun without the world buff. And there's a whole different like culture for parsing world buff. There's so much stuff. Yeah, I don't know where I stand on this. I wouldn't mind it if they wanted to change something about it.
There were no summoning networks, nor 40 people clicking a songflower at once and then scrambling to log off so their buffs don't tick down. So because of this, people zoned into these 15-year-old raids with little to no mechanics with 50% chance to crit. And as a result, the raiding scene was far easier than it
Yeah,
was
you just
in
fucking blast through.
the original run. And that's just one example. But as I mentioned, people just kind of had this tendency to yearn for what they don't have. And after we got the 2019 No Changes run, the No Changes community has sort of waned little by little to the point to where people are now cheering on level boosts and WoW tokens, funny enough. Obviously, as Willie mentioned, we now have Cataclysm Classic and, of course, Season of Discovery, which holds so many changes that some people regard it as Classic Plus, though I'm not so sure about that now because I do think that a lot of these changes are more sort of in line with the retail philosophy than they are in vanilla, but we'll see if he gets into that himself before I speak more on that. But
I think Classic Season Discovery is a cool attempt for Blizzard to try new things. I don't want to shit on them too much. I feel like there's a split community of wanting this or wanting that, and it's hard for them to decide and be in the middle. Because if you do one thing, that other group's not going to be happy. If you do that other one, this other group's not going to be happy. Like when people say we want Classic Plus, like what are they expecting, you know? Well, what do they want? I feel like most of the people don't know. They just want something new, right? But it's hard. I feel like it's very hard as an MMO dev. Can't shit too hard on a seasonal when it's just that seasonal. They're just testing and figuring out, yeah. Salt isn't Classic. It's just its own game. Exactly. I feel like they want vanilla Classic Plus new raids. Classic Plus is what private servers have been doing for years. How long do you think Solid P4 will last? Just like any other phases we got. But it is level 60 phase, so we'll see how hard it goes or not. But every new patch, new expansion, there's always hype and then it goes down. It's normal. And then people play other games. When there's a new patch, people come back and play again. Solid Success much better than Season of Mastery. I think it's better than Season of Mastery too.
very funny.
Of course, it has like its pros and cons, right?
Looking back to 2019 and sort of coalescing how we went from no changes to WoW tokens and level from 1 to 50 in 2 days with experience boosted incursions. It's just wild.
And then along comes TBC and Wrath and, well, here we are. Or in regards to the Season of Discovery, imagine telling a Feral Alliance Druid player back then, there will be a future where people are literally begging for you to join their raids. You could have next to no gear and just auto-attacking cat form, but you have Wind Fury, so enjoy your permanent raid spot. Or
Sure.
That's actually pretty in line with vanilla, honestly. My first raiding character was my paladin, who had of the bear gear and was retribution spec. In other words, I was about as useful as boobs on a bull, but I got a raid spot because why? I had Valley Blessings. And this was back when there were 5 minutes and there were no greater blessings, so 80% of my gameplay was just rebuffing people.
5
and
minute
drinking.
buff's
So it's kind of
crazy.
interesting that if you were actually able to find somebody who was willing to do that, that alone was enough to warrant a raid spot.
And Shaman players, there will be a time in the future when they are
Chat, am I crazy? That quality of life of making buffs a little bit longer. Do we have a problem with that? Do you actually want a 5 minute buff? I can't. For me, no, dude. I play a paladin. I don't want to be buffing every 5 minute 20 people or 40 people. Are you fucking crazy? Hell nah, dude. That's what I'm talking about for quality of life. Dude, I don't want a 5 minute buff. It's crazy.
playing the most dominant class in the game, whilst warriors feel average in comparison.
But there are a few
Changed,
people that will
that's
say
for
hashtag
sure.
no
What
change
was
to that
saying?
kind of
You
stuff.
think you do, but you don't. We've even moved past that now, I feel like. We have had it, and now we want something else. Today's gonna...
Yeah, but I think it's just human nature. Not even anything to do with World of Warcraft. There always has to be something to chase. Instead of being content with what we have to focus our attention on what we don't have. And there has to be something in the near future that's going to be
Work
great.
harder.
Not to get too off topic, but in my opinion, it's very human nature to derive your purpose to obtaining things in this very materialistic society that we live in, whether that be actual material things, a car, house, piece of technology, whatever, or maybe something like a partner, a better physique, or in this case, a video game, or how that video game is developed. People tend to live entire lives thinking, okay, if I can just get myself into this position, or if I can get this thing, and then everything will be hunky-dory, and then my actual life can begin, despite the fact that we're sitting on a mountain of other things that we thought the same thing of. I found that you truly start living your life when you realize that your obstacles, your problems, and your issues, and overcoming them is life itself. There's a relevant quote by John Lennon. Life is what happens when we're busy making other plans. And there's also a song you can listen to called Run by Collective Soul. And it really encapsulates this feeling very well.
Be a bit of a retrospective and thoughts type ramble video on the general state of the game as it currently stands on this big line going from Wrath to Kata, as well as seasonal servers, and of course the versions of WoW that most, but not all, have now left behind. But first, a quick
shameless self-plug here. Recently on the channel I did something of a historical archival of vanilla WoW specifically, so if you are curious of the history of vanilla and private servers and how we have gotten here, that might be worth a watch. It's actually pretty topical to this discussion. It's about 30 minutes
That was
long.
fun to
word from
go on
today's
that
sponsor,
journey.
Boot.dev.
I remember all that.
Boot.dev is a platform that aims to equip you with the skills to forge a career in back-end development through interactive lessons and learning. Where it's unique is that it
I wish I had something like this when I was in school. I've seen a few people do sponsors for it actually. I probably will do one myself in the future. It seems cool. I do have a background in computer science.
School?
So
oh.
obviously my love for RPGs.
Gotcha.
So this is like the perfect mix for me. I was born too early, damn it. The best I got was Mavis Beacon teaches typing.
progress and achievements.
Chad, do you wish you were born later or earlier? I feel like I'm happy with where I'm at. I think it's fine.
An RPG with goals,
We got to see a lot of cool
experience, and
stuff.
leaderboards.
From, like, Game
Boot.dev
Boys
offers self-motivated
to
individuals
DS,
the tools to get fully on
computers
board with
becoming
the
a
Python
thing.
and Go programming languages. It does this
Earlier,
through
or you wish you were born
hands-on learning, where
earlier?
You're going to be writing tons of your own code so that you
Later,
can get a
so I can
grasp
play
of the
VR games?
fundamentals from the basics to more advanced lessons. On top of that, all content is free to view and watch in guest mode, and there's even a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. So even if you're just interested in checking out how Boot works and want to see more before you know if it's for you, there is very much an
so I can
option
buy
to do
houses
that.
for
Back-end development
pennies.
itself is a career with tons of potential, great earnings, often remote positions,
Okay, you
and
guys
you
have
can
some
start
good
working
points.
towards that today at your own pace. You can click the link in the description box and use my code WILLE to get 25% off your first payment for Boot.dev. That's 25% your first month or your first year tier depending on the subscription that you choose.
Boot.dev.
Many thanks to Boot.dev for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. So I am a Cataclysm enjoyer. I've made a bunch of videos on the topic way before any thoughts of Cata Classic was ever possible.
Oh, wow.
And even back then, they were on the positive side and received a lot of positive feedback. But I also think it is where things start to noticeably change, and it's a time where WoW entered a new era, if you will. I've always put...
For sure. And that's the ironic thing with Cataclysm Classic, is that the expansion that most drastically changed the game away from vanilla is now
it changed the whole map. It changed the whole questing genre, I feel like.
On the 2019 Classic line. In my opinion, though, I really feel like Wrath doesn't get enough credit for this sort of shift in design philosophy. There's so many changes in Wrath that sort of set the stage for Cataclysm. We have multiple raid difficulties. Normal raids were meant to be way easier, and those seeking a challenge were instead funneled into heroic mode. This itself is
Heroic's actually really challenging, by the way. Going back into Kata, I thought it was going to be a breeze, but it was actually quite challenging. As 10 man.
This, in vanilla and BC, the rating was pretty exclusive and unforgiving, and comparative to player skill at the time, the only option was heroic, you could say. If you couldn't beat a boss, you couldn't beat a boss. There's no easier difficulty to run to for lesser rewards, but still being able to see every single boss and clear the raid and get the story, essentially. Today, this has been taken to the extreme with LFR mode, which was Cataclysm, and it's now, I think, LFR, Normal, Heroic, and Mythic, which has made things more accessible, but at the same time, raiding, which used to be this big carrot on a stick for players to chase, is now much more within reach, which is nice, but also it removes a thing to chase and work towards.
Am I the only one that doesn't care about LFR or Normal Heroic? I feel like people just want one difficulty and they hit LFR, but there's some people that, you know, can't put up a group together and they just want to experience that raid and see what it's like inside there and go and do it. I feel like there's no problem with that. I've been a PPer my whole life, so I didn't raid a lot. But I feel like the past few years I've been raiding a lot. In Lost Ark, we did all the hard difficulty. FF, we did all the ultimates. I've been doing every hard modes now in WoW. For people that have a lot of time and can put together these things, they could do it. But for average Joe, I feel like it's very hard. And I hear it all the time, even in SOD or Classic or Kata. People have a hard time like finding a group, joining, and they just want to play. So I don't know if I feel good about people like gatekeeping LFR. Like, fuck it, dude, who cares? If you don't want to do LFR, just do normal. You still have something to chase for. You're still grinding for pre-raid biz, so you can go into normal. After you do normal, you tackle heroics. But maybe he wants to do LFR just to, you know. People used to complain about this because of Titan Forging. Titan Forging, I agree. But just normal LFR, I don't really mind it, man. They fucked LFG for finding group, especially for arena. Like the LFG bulletin, the little toggle we use to find people. I think that's fine. Blizzard can definitely go in there and remove some like sellers, but I think having that is fine. Because in Classic WoW, people are like, oh, don't bring that. Like, I like to go into trade chat and look for people. Yes, back then when we were in like a smaller server and you know everyone, it's like neighbors, you see familiar faces and whatnot, and you could type like looking for more, right? But nowadays, gaming has changed, and if you go to trade chat, it's just like spam messages. And you can't even see what's going on. And then now, these players are like, okay, there's too much shit going on, let's make an add-on. And they literally have an add-on called, is it LFG Bulletin? And it's like, bro, it's the same thing. You guys are saying hashtag no changes, don't put in an LFG system. And then now they make an add-on, and this add-on has like a bulletin of, you know, looking for group. It's the same concept, in my opinion. It's the same concept. And all the Classic era boys that I know, they all use this add-on. And it's the same people that are saying, don't bring in LFG to WoW. But I feel like it's the same thing almost. Imagine trying to find group with some insane spam in the chat. Yeah, that covers everything. I'm playing on Crusader Strike, Mr. Corey. It's because people are stupid and they think RDF and LFG are the same thing. Okay, that's a whole different thing.
And, you know, I've been very vocal that this is one of the many ways that the social fabric of the game has been sort of eviscerated.
You know what my favorite is, though? I like to walk up to... I've been doing this a lot on stream, where I walk up to people and ask them if they want to come. I think those are fun.
Because you don't really
It's a different experience.
Talk to anyone to experience 95% of the game. You don't need to apply to a guild, socialize with them, get to know them, and get to know your role within the raiding team. The hurdle has been downsized, and you can now experience this grand finale of the game start to finish in one weekend without talking to anyone, whereas before it would take that socializing and slow progression week by week. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. You can probably guess what I prefer. I try not to be too matter-of-fact about it. Usually I fail at that, but I think that both have their upsides and downsides. I personally prefer vanilla style, of course, but what I'm saying is that this has drastically altered the form of the game, and it was something that started in Wrath, not Cataclysm. And beyond that, we have the Dungeon Finder, which is another accessibility option that similarly damaged the social fabric of the game, and it's kind of understood to be pretty anti-vanilla. You have achievements, which...
I think this just... it's like we changed, I think. I think players changed during the time. Back then, you definitely talked a little bit more in the party. But nowadays, if I join in a group in any shape or form of WoW, they're all just in there to get their loot and get out. Most of them don't like talking. I don't know what it is. Even like classic players chat. I feel like it's different, man. It's a different day and age.
Coincides with the game becoming more goal-oriented. We talked about this in the Rotan video not too long ago, is that the game is very, very, very goal-oriented today. Every action must have this tangible reward or it isn't seen to be worth doing. And I think...
Do you remember Faralina back in the launch? Yes, I remember. I was a level 30 rogue. I wanted to do a SM because SM is my favorite dungeon. But if you were not a mage or a healer, you were not invited. Everyone was whipping mages and just spamming dungeons. You join a group, they don't talk. They just spam leveling. It was different. Like, people are playing the game differently. It's just a different day and age, is what I'm trying to say. There's definitely like some gems along the way where the group talks and has fun. I try to talk to people in the groups because it's funny. It's funny, you get good content out of it. But there's not a lot of people talking anymore in the games.
Achievements, while they can be good, as they give players more things to accomplish and chase, it does have another effect of sort of changing the climate to a much more goal-oriented feel, as everything now has a reward tied to it, instead of just experiencing it being the reward itself. So, yeah, Wrath is favorably as it's looked back upon, and I think that's for good reason. I do think it was a great expansion, but I think it's also important to say that in a lot of ways, it really marked the true beginning of the change away from its roots in vanilla, and I think it's sort of flown under the radar in that regard, because most people just say, oh, Cataclysm was that expansion.
Put it like this: Vanilla and TBC and Wrath were the classics with their big talent trees, simpler gameplay, persistent old world, varied stats, and so on. Clatter, Mr. Pandaria, and WoD were the progressive expansions. Blizzard had hit it big with this whole MMO thing, bigger than they would have ever imagined, and by 2010 when Clatter dropped, WoW was over 6 years old. Time to do big updates to core aspects of the game, reworking talent trees, harder and more varied content, focus on collections, and trimming that which was deemed unnecessary out of the game. The third...
Yeah, primarily the social structure. I'm very vocal about this, probably to the point of nauseam, but I do think that the social fabric of the game has been sacrificed at that altar of convenience. And if I had any power in MMO design, I think that would be my focus. People would absolutely despise me for it because people love multiplayer games so much that they don't want to interact in any way, shape, or form with the other players. But when they make that friend where 20 years from now they're still playing with, as I have and as many of you have, I think that they'll look back and say, okay, well, you know, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing that I had to group for that quest. It took 1 minute longer than it would have taken if I were able to solo it, but maybe if I take my head out of the go, go, go mentality and socialize a little bit in a genre of game defined by its social nature, maybe that can also lead
Dude, the
to
go, go, go is too
positive,
strong,
long-lasting
man.
things. I mean, I don't want to start a war on solo players. If you just want to kind of chill, not talk to anyone, and just kind of turn yourself off, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But at the same time, I mean, you have to admit, multiplayer is literally in the name of the genre. So I'm just saying that, you know, maybe earning that lifelong friend is worth that 1 minute loss.
Era of WoW comes along and it's the most divisive one. The temporary power expansions, Legion, BFA, and Shadowlands. In these games, we have our class templates kind of done basically, but we're going to be adding new stuff throughout the expansion to make them interesting. This started off fine in Legion. We were coming off the back of WoD and people wanted more stuff to do in the game. And Legion, whatever you think about it, had stuff to do. But people got very tired of this format by BFA. And in Shadowlands, yeah, people were absolutely done with it. Also, the
borrowed power systems, I think, are a good example of short-term game over long-term sustainability, because as good as it felt to get them, such as artifacts and legendaries in Legion,
it feels amazing to get, but once that expansion is over, you lose it, so it feels shitty. But I feel like Blizzard did it in a way, because each new expansion, like he showed right here, we get what, like 2 new abilities, a little bit more talent tree, and WoW's been going on so long, and I think it's hard to keep up with the content they want to deliver. And if they kept adding 2 new buttons and more talent, it's gonna get oversaturated. So they added in these borrowed power versions, so that way they could give us some new buttons, but after the expansion is over, we lose it. Definitely not the best answer, of course. The Legion, definitely fun, like what Willie said, but since they kept repeating this process in the next expansion and next, people got tired of it. And then I think in Dragonflight, they made it where there's no more borrowed power, right? In Trade, they brought back the old system of the talent trees. So I think they understand what they're doing and trying to get the people to try out. But not a lot of people like the new changes, right? And that's why we have a lot of classic players.
Unless you got pride as like me, it really felt bad when you lost them. You saw them sort of trying to address that by baking in some artifact or legendary traits into the talents of BFA. But overall, it just felt like...
I wonder how it would have been if we kept going with our weapon. Maybe that doesn't make sense too. Legion was good. Legion was goated. If people say it was bad, the Legion was good. I liked it.
Caught up, and there's this big attrition.
Maybe PvP, there was some sad times for
where
sure.
People were very well aware of the layout of these expansions at this point. They were very formulaic. You know, we've been talking about this a lot recently. Every game operates on this carrot on a stick design. Even something as simple as Pong. It's just a series of ones and zeros manipulated such that you gain satisfaction and enjoyment from beating levels, opponents, progressing, whatever the genre demands. And I know it's much harder to do today, but your goal is, when your player looks at your game, they don't see a carrot. They don't see this treadmill. It has to be unique and interesting and immersive enough to blind them to
What? That thing isn't... So what is that?
And I think by the time Shadowlands came around, it was so derivative and formulaic that this illusion was just non-existent. You had the Ma, which was a high-level zones with rares and treasures, similar to Suramar, Argus, Nazjatar, Mechagon. You had the mission tables, the garrison type system, or order halls, or Covenant Hub, or the weekly progression system, Torghast, which some equivalents would be Warfronts, Island Expeditions, and so on. So it sort of got into this rhythm to where it was just too predictable. And because it was so predictable, it did a very poor job of disguising the carrot on a stick. And I think a lot of people, when they launched the game, they saw that and they felt like they weren't really playing a video game. They kind of felt like they were on that treadmill. And I think during this era, that was probably one of the game's biggest problems.
Expansions had a big focus on stuff to do to keep up. They wanted you to log in and do your checklist. Then along comes Dragonflight. We've got big
Man, when those were first introduced, I used to do all of them and not miss a single one. I think a lot of people were like that, and there was a lot of achievement collectors too, right? Every new reputation came out, I remember I always wanted to get exalted on all of them. But I gave up at a certain point.
Again, Blizzard rein in the weekly and monthly upkeep stuff, lots more collection content, more varied endgame progression paths, and so on. And the Wall Within is the start of a trio of expansions, so we'll see how it builds on Dragonflight. But the point is, Cataclysm is definitely the first big shift in how WoW progressed, and as such people draw a line in the sand, and it is the end of Classic for them. I often read comments along the line of, I played Cata back in the day for a few months and it was bad, not gonna be playing that again. And, well, is it time to feel old yet? Because Cata released 14 years ago. I'm just saying, perhaps after not having done something for 14 years, if you tried it again, you may have a different opinion. Or not. Really, the game...
For me, I would probably try it if it didn't have microtransactions. I know that I'm probably a bit more intense about them than
Man, Mastin, you're a boomer, man. Just try it out, bro. I want to say, chat, I think I had fun with Kata more than Wrath. But back in the day, Wrath was my favorite. So it's weird, right?
of you guys, but you know, for me, when the most efficient way to progress your character isn't your time, but instead it's your credit card.
Dude, if you find a group of fun people to play with, and none of them are swipers, and you just do raid together and progress, I think you could get the same experience, right?
It just kills all motivation to play, especially with the GDKP culture that's so prevalent in the game now. I don't know, it just feels like a
I haven't
scam
done a
to me,
single GDKP
especially
on Kata.
considering the addictive properties of the genre, which is a shame because he's
Number
right.
20 clear, of course.
You know, it has been 14
We're progressing
years.
to Lair
I think it would
Heroics.
actually be interesting, perhaps even fun, dare I say, to revisit it. But, you know, for me, I just can't look past the WoW token anymore. I have tried before, but it's just sort of like this black cloud that's like, you know, you could find much greater success if you just paid some extra money, right? Why level when you can boost? Why...
I
farm
get it if
gold
he
when
doesn't
you can
want,
buy
you
it?
know.
Why join a raiding guild and progress when you can GDKP? And so on and so forth. And for me, the question
But
just
it's like what he said back here. You know how he said he likes to have interactions with group and raid with the fun boys. You can still do that if you find a good guild, right? It's generally the same, I'd say. I'm having a blast with my raid.
it becomes, okay, well, why play? Where's the satisfaction here?
Changed significantly the moment when the Dark Portal opened. Expansions were the single biggest turning point in World of Warcraft's history. Before that, there was no concept of an old world or old content. Everything was as it always had been. You'd have your maximum level players in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. Starting at level 1 would see you run into people all the time instead of just rushing to level cap to get to the current content. And honestly, there could have been a huge tornado in Westfall, and the Barons were split in two during TBC or Wrath, and I probably wouldn't have noticed because I just didn't have a reason to be there anymore. Expansions...
I'm not sure if he's talking about the original run here or the re-releases, but when I was playing in BC and Wrath, the old world was still active on my server, which was Khadgar, which I believe was even around a medium population for most of its lifespan. And I just think that's so important in MMOs is this world presence and the feeling that no matter where you are, you're in a battleground, you're in a main city, you're in a raid dungeon, leveling an alt, whatever, there's someone collecting plain strider beaks in the Barrens, or there's someone hunting down the green hills of Stranglethorn. Having your MMO feel alive requires players in every corner, and I think that one of the reasons why BC Classic and Wrath Classic didn't do as well as vanilla is because, partially due to the level boost, people were in this mindset that the old world wasn't a part of these expansions. This was like one of the main arguments of people who are for the level boost. They say, oh, well, the Eastern Kingdoms in Kalimdor, they're not a part of BC.
I'll say this. Definitely level boost probably makes the leveling go faster. But at the same time, from Classic to TBC, most of the people are already at 70, right? And we had Classic WoW for a long time. And most of the people have like multiple 60s. So they're mostly all at 70. And same thing with like Classic Relaunch or Season of Mastery or Hardcore WoW. At the start, when we get the new phase, yes, there's a bunch of people leveling up, right? So many people leveling up. And I love seeing that. Everywhere I go, there's people like collecting or questing. But the longer this goes, and most people are done with raiding and they're ready for the next patch or next season, there's not a lot of people questing. The world kind of dies out. Similar to retail. I think retail, if you go to like LM Forest, I don't know if you'll see that many people. Or like Westfall, maybe there is some in LM Forest. But every expansion, every patch is like that, where there's a lot of people leveling at the start, but towards the end, there's not a lot. Because everyone's at 60 or they're doing end content, right? Maybe a few, right? But you see this more often in Classic because they keep doing relaunches. And then right now, there's even a group of Classic players doing Classic Project Deviate Delight. I don't know what the name is, but they basically went to a dead server and they're all starting from level 1 to get that same experience of what I talked about, where there's like a bunch of people leveling. And this part is the most fun, right? And any expansion, like the start where everyone's grinding to get a leveling up, that's the best part. So when people say like, I miss this, it only happens when there's like new servers opening. If you continue playing out, even in like Faralina, at the end when we're done with Nax, there's not a lot of people leveling into zones. There's like no one. So I feel like this part is just a little bit nostalgic talk.
And I don't know, there's just something to me to where having 2 entire dead continents and loading up all of the players into 7 zones where you can fly, you just lose the enormity that's so critical to the genre. And you kill it when you release a level boost, because why would you level from 1 to 58, which could take weeks or months for some players, when you have a button on the login screen that loads you up with a set of gear, mounts, puts you at 58, trains everything. I think it really just clashed with one of Classic's biggest design pillars, and that's world presence. Everyone was loaded up straight into the Outland. They felt stupid if they didn't buy the boost, and the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor became barren as a result, which was harmful because people who actually did want to level, they did it completely alone. Like, imagine leveling up in these low-level zones completely alone, and how demotivating that must feel to see no other players. They must have felt like they were playing a single-player game, and as shown by the recent GDC chart, the retention suffered, and the vast majority of the player base were shifted towards the endgame players, and endgame players are at endgame. You've now lost this constant influx of new players keeping your world alive, and I think that, again, the recent subscriber chart speaks for itself on how well BC Classic did and Wrath Classic as well.
This is hard to keep though, like all the players, like we'll eventually reach our goal and it's gonna be over. Similar to at the start, remember this effect right here he was talking about?
Products.
Grass is green on the other side. It always looks like that. It always looks like we could have more. If they didn't change, it would have been better. I'm not saying all the changes are good, and I'm not like an advocate for boosting, by the way. I've never really boosted.
The world is a part of the Burning Crusade. The old world is a part of Wrath. I think at a certain point, you just get so many expansions and new zones and continents that it'll be impossible that they'll all be populated. But I think that would maybe start around Mists of Pandaria. I think that for BC through Cataclysm, the world is still small enough that it was a major part of the game and a large part of the identity of Classic.
What is this song?
Again, I think the boosts were a big reason of just killing that. To be fair here, I think another contributing huge factor to this were the AoE dungeon boosts, the non-paid ones. Well, you pay for gold, not your credit card. And, just the evolution of the player base in general and playing much more efficiently. And in regards to the dungeon boosts, I think that should have been addressed much sooner. I was campaigning for that pretty early on in vanilla, but unfortunately, as discussed, the no changes crowd kind of dominated the sphere at this point, and they weren't able to see past that. I think that Blizzard was sort of like, oh, you want no changes, you little shits? Fine, you'll get no changes. And they sort of left the dungeon boosting meta alone, which really damaged the world. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm a big fan of world presence. Having the world feel alive, I think that's extremely important in any MMO, not just WoW.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Keeping the world alive is good. I also liked visiting Clash Trainer every 2 level. It felt magical, and I'd be excited to run to my trainer to train. I think that makes it where you could like travel around the cities. Class quests, and number one thing, I kind of wish WoW would add more challenging content. Kind of like in RuneScape, you know, if you want to get that, is it the flame cloak or lava cloak? What is that thing, Chad? There's like a crazy 60 wave you need to beat through. And that kind of stuff is fun to grind for. It's kind of like WoW Mage Tower, but 60 levels, I guess. And I feel like having those challenges are really fun in a game. Inferno, is it Inferno Cave? Yeah, I want like challenging things in WoW where I could tackle myself and get in there, right? I want more of those. Kind of like this guy doing this SM boost. Well, I don't know if it's that hard. I don't think it's hard, but if you're at a level cap, it's definitely a little bit more difficult, right? Or even let's per se in hardcore WoW, every 5 level they add a little boss you could 1v1. That could be freaking prestigious and fun, right? You could have the choice to do it or not. Brawler's Guild, dude, Brawler's Guild was fun back in the day. I liked that. I don't know if many people remember, but I liked Brawler's Guild. Inferno and Quiver in old school RuneScape right now is the hardest challenge. It's very cool. Yeah, I want more challenging things like that. I think that's really cool, man. I don't like the challenge when it's organizing a raid. I'd rather be 1 to 5 players solo. Exactly, man. I mean, like, raid is raid. I think that stays in its own genre. It's doing great. They could leave it there. But for solo content, I feel like these are fun. Because some players even like to revisit the old raids and try to solo the mechs and whatnot and try to remember everything. If the scaling is correct, it can be a little bit difficult. If it's a really low raid, you're just going to one-shot everything, right? I don't know why they didn't realize yet Mage Tower was a huge success and they don't copy paste it. Yeah, I don't know why either. I don't know if I hear a lot of people saying Mage Tower sucked. I think most people enjoyed it and they really liked the challenge. And if they beat it, it feels really good, right? It's like doing Elden Ring and you beat Raw Dawn, the last boss, and you're gonna feel fucking great, right? And you can tell your friend, yo, this fight was super hard, but I came up with this boom, boom, boom. I don't know why they don't do more of those. I would love that. That carrot on a stick is important, man. And solo content like those would be insanely fun, where people prep. Like, even if I ask Zar right now if he would like that, he would probably love it, because he's all about prestige, right? And he likes the challenging stuff, especially if it's solo content. The best WoW devs are the WoW players. I swear, there's a lot of good ideas out there. If we could throw back, it's even like Warcraft 3. Remember Warcraft 3? We had so many cool game modes people were making. The players, they have some good ideas, man. Dude, if they give a WoW server where players could sandbox and make their own modes, holy fuck. That'd be crazy.
That is because I think it does a lot to immerse the player and make them feel like they're part of this living, breathing online world. And the more immersed they are, the more blinded they are to this carrot on a stick illusion that we were talking about.
Changed the old world a lot, but Kata came along and made it obvious. And when the change became apparent, it was too much at once for many players. And now I've replayed the original 3 expansions all the way through, done every raid, leveled every class, and, you know, played the game a fair amount. It's vanilla, which is the version of the game that stands out the most because it is not an expansion. If Blizzard want to re-release, well, any expansion and call it classic, I mean, go for it. I've mentioned it in videos before, but people have started WoW at all points throughout its near 20-year history. Not every expansion may have had the same growth, but each will have its own merits that a certain amount of people will want to go back and see. Classic can
Man,
really...
what could WoW do? What could have they done? Like, the starting zones are dead because I feel like they push the dungeon grind for leveling. I think most people choose to do dungeon spam and level in retail WoW, right? If they were to start a new character. Do you guys like going through the route of the same place of like Elven Forest, Westfall, Red Ridge? Or do you think it was a good idea that they let players choose to like start questing wherever they want? Because they unlocked every zone now, right? But I'm trying to think here because I've played Final Fantasy 14 and that game is still old-fashioned where it makes you start from the start. And Realm Reborn leveling was horrendous, I'd say. It wasn't fun at all. So I think Blizzard wanted to avoid that and give the players the choice to go wherever they want to start leveling, but I feel like it's confusing when you do that. WoW needs to step back, adding content and starting upgrade. The map looks like a clown world right now. Yeah, I don't know if it was good to just release everyone and say, do whatever you want, guys. You could go to any zone you want to level up. But that might be confusing. I remember having a few friends start, and even my ex-girlfriend back in the day, and she got sent to, is it Borealis? And she got so lost, and she quit. I feel like you could get lost. I don't know if the way they did it is good. Maybe just restart. Fuck, I don't know. It's too hard. It's a big bandage they slapped on, and you gotta really think about how you can fix it if they want to fix it. Maybe a new server where there's no boost, and they redo the whole starting zone, and you have to go through the zone to level up. But then again, they did a squish, and I don't know if you could revisit TPC, Wrath, Panda. There's too many. So I guess after like the first classic zone, they let you choose to go to one of those islands, TBC, Wrath, or I don't know, bro. It's a lot. I don't know how they could pick it up. I mean, what they have now in max content is fine. It's just, I think people like Mad Season miss where people are running around and leveling in the starting zone. And I get that too. It's cool to see a lively world where people are running around. But at the same time, as I covered from this, you only really have this when it's a new server launch or a new expansion and everyone's leveling. Once they're all at max level, you're not going to see a whole lot of these starters, right? That first wave is the biggest.
Well, kind of anyways. This has been changing as Blizzard as well as the player base are getting more open to altering or adding to the current Classic expansion. I still reckon one day we're going to have Legion Classic too. And yes, this means WoD Classic will exist too. And we'll just
Make fun of Draenor Classic all you want, but you have to admit, this is a big opportunity for Blizzard to redeem it. The reason why Draenor was kind of a dud isn't just for the content it had. It was also because of the content it didn't have. You know, you had the raid tier, the major cities, zones, the Gorehowl legendary quest line, and so much more ended up on the cutting room floor because they just kind of wanted to rush it out. So if they were to give it the same sort of treatment as the Season of Discovery, I really do think that they could make a decent expansion out of it, and it would be interesting to see what people think of what Draenor should have been instead of what we eventually got.
blast through it in about 12 months or so. We
I
can
could agree
choose
with
the
that.
pacing of expansions now after all. That's pretty cool, I guess. But as Classic goes forwards into Kata and beyond, at the same time, Vanilla has started to grow in a completely new way. You know, it's no coincidence that Season of Discovery happened when it did, just as Kata's about to come out. It keeps those more traditional Classic enjoyers with something to go and check out. And Season of Discovery has done very, very well so far. You've probably seen...
Okay, so this is aged pretty poorly. Here are the current sub estimates, and there are many reasons for this, I'm sure, but I think the biggest one that most would agree with is stagnation. At the time of this video, it's been over 2 months since Phase 3 released, and with the level cap being 50, people have just sort of run out of things to do. And combine that with Cataclysm Classic and the recent community run Fresh on Deviant and Zandalar, yeah, Season of Discovery is kind of dead right now.
It is.
But the real question...
P4 hype. Should we check right now, chat? I've been on the same case as Mad Season. Was it 2 weeks ago I logged in and there was like maybe 6 people in Ironforge? But new phase is coming out and I think there's a little bit more people playing. Right now it's 12 p.m. in the morning in NA. At this point, we're going to go full circle Dragonflight Classic. I honestly thought they would stop after Wrath and let people vote on the next thing, what they wanted to play, right?
you should be asking is, why? Why has it stagnated? Aside from the lengthy break between phases, is because the developers have shoved a rocket in the ass of the player base. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but between the XP buffs and the gold buffs and all of the nerfs, the main reason why people have stopped playing is because they've removed all reasons to play. I will never understand that despite the fact that vanilla...
Here's what I'll say. Here, I agree with a lot of things he's saying. I think this maybe was a little bit of an overpush. The main problem was gold. That incursion, introducing that much gold. I remember I freaked out and I tweeted at them, yo, you need to nerf this gold immediately. This is bad. Because we were getting 11G and we could spam it, right? That was bad. Outside of that, I think the EXP was fine because the season of discovery, it's a season, right? And people only get to play it this time around. You won't get to any time anywhere else. And I've had a lot of people complaining saying, I want more alts. I don't want to do the rep grind on all of them. And I would like to level up so I could pick up the runes because picking up runes take a lot more time. So in a way, I don't mind having the EXP boost because we have so much other things to do, right? But the gold thing, I will hard agree on. The gold thing was bad. Because that removed where people like grind for gold and whatnot, and my mouse is dead, guys. It will not move. Yeah, the gold part was the bad part.
And
100p.
And all of the nerfs. The main reason why people have stopped playing is because they've removed all reasons to play.
Yeah, challenging raids, believe it or not, a lot of people don't like challenging raids. So I'm curious how they're going to approach Molten Core.
I will never understand that despite the fact that Vanilla WoW has proven itself time and time again, it's been relaunched like 1,000 fucking times over the past 20 years. It triples subscription revenue in the 2019 culture, and it maintains a large portion of that boon, as proven by the subscriber charts. And yet still, these developers are so deathly afraid of people playing their game. And you see this not only in the form of 200% XP and gold bonuses, but also things like rep grinds. I remember in Phase 1, each class had runes that were locked behind the new reputation tied to those boxes, and people were like, you can't grind this out in the span of a day? Nerf this crap. And that's fine. You're always going to get that from the MMO player base, but the problem here is that they did. It's just mystifying to me that people sign up to play an MMO, a genre of game defined by its time-consuming and grindy nature, and are like outraged when they encounter something that isn't solvable or completable in one day. To me, it's like having an FPS without guns, or a racing game without steering. And it's the same thing with the Sunken Temple raid. Players couldn't clear it within the first 24 hours.
I'm scared. I feel like Massey's is mad when I put him on speed. I only put it on speed check because Zor wants to do Sunken Temple and I gotta finish.
50 leveling into account, so it must be nerfed. You guys remember when Next Ramus came out, and 90% of the raiding guilds couldn't clear anything past the Spider Wing, and the game only grew in subscribers? In fact, it was so difficult by the time they even re-released it for Wrath, on the premise that probably not even 1% of the population actually completed the raid in its entirety. I don't know, it's just like, people talk a gang of shit of how much better players are today, but I don't know. It seems to me like they're soft as my grandpa's pecker when Bob Barker was replaced on The Price is Right. And you can make the argument that it's seasonal, and it's phase-based, I get that, so there should be some increased cadence. That's fine, but here's my counter-argument. How many people are playing Season of Discovery right now? You know, the same people who cry for nerfs to rep farms and nerfs to raids, buffs to leveling, buffs to gold, are the very same people who are doing, guess what? Well, I don't know, but what I do know is that they're not playing Season of Discovery because they got their wish. Everything was nerfed and sped up so that they could earn the privilege of not having to play anymore. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. All games, no matter how simple or complex, boil down to the following fundamental design. You are handed problems and also satisfying ways to solve those problems. And in the case of MMOs,
yeah, there's other ways to solve it.
Every single player you see are playing for the privilege of not having to play anymore. They level so they don't have to level anymore so they can start dungeons. They do dungeons so they don't have to do dungeons anymore so they can raid. They farm honor to reach a certain PvP rank so they don't have to PvP anymore. And they do these raids over and over and over again so they get the best gear so they don't have to raid anymore. They're farming gold to buy their mount so they don't have to farm gold anymore, etc., etc. I'm not saying that you can't enjoy it. It's the entire point. But what I'm saying is that when your solution to perceived unfun obstacles is to remove them entirely, you're essentially just removing reasons to play your game. It's the developer's job to make these obstacles fun and satisfying to overcome, not to remove them entirely. And when you speed up leveling to such an intense degree, and you inflate the economy to such an intense degree, and when you nerf raids into the ground because guilds can clear them,
you love showing that.
You're doing exactly that. You're removing obstacles because you don't know how to make them fun. Where people could very well be leveling alts right now, they've already leveled 4, and where they could be farming gold for their epic mount, they've already got the gold for all 4 of their characters. And you know what's worse is that this is just surface level analysis and short-sightedness, because as the player base drops, how much pressure do you think is put on the developers to get their asses moving before people just lose interest and never return and their game dies? You know, one of the reasons why Phase 3 was received poorly, and people are going to mention this in the comments, are due to incursions. If you don't know, these are a new feature with Phase 3. You go to a variety of areas, enter a dream world, collect quests.
Yeah, incursions was
again. And on the release, they were insanely broken. The amount of XP and gold they gave was absolutely ludicrous.
The gold was insane.
12 hours, and at the same time, they were able to farm enough gold for their epic mount. People made like 1,000 gold over that probably in this first surge of Phase 3, and it was nerfed shortly after, but not before the damage was done. And it created a massive, massive disadvantage for those who missed out on it, or maybe they knew about it and they just wanted to play vanilla World of Warcraft and quest a dungeon or whatever, but just not running the same infinitely repeatable quests over and over. But my point is that this happened because the phase was rushed out, because as Phase 2 went on and people started to quit, the developers cut corners and they rushed it out.
I think it was a cool idea they had and they wanted to try something new with the area. Dude, again, they should have made this where you go in and this is a boss for your like level 25. And if you beat it, you get a cool tablet or something. Like a mage tower, right? Oh, that would have been so cool, man. I would have loved that. That would have been cool. Like a challenging boss.
They rushed out this broken, untested feature, and it's a problem that they created themselves because through the form of XP boosts, gold boosts, and reputation nerfs, they've removed all these obstacles, and obviously the player base are going to more quickly run out of things to do, and therefore they introduced this pressure onto themselves to push out untested content as fast as possible. So, who knows? Maybe if they didn't nerf the rep grind in Phase 1, maybe if they didn't release the XP and gold boost in Phase 2, people would actually have more reasons to play the game, and they could have taken an extra week or two to find this very glaring flaw that should never have made it to live, and would have resulted in a much smoother Phase 3 launch, and they wouldn't have lost so many players. And the argument to this is that it's Season of Discovery, it's not vanilla, but, again, all I need to reply to that is this. How many people are playing Season of Discovery right now? Vanilla World of Warcraft, I'll remind you, has been running successfully for the past 20 years, whether that be Blizzard, servers, or private. I appreciate the desire to add new stuff and experiment, but I think it also gets to the point where these devs are seeing flaws where there aren't any. Blizzard kind of has a history of this. On another topic, that's what really hurt Diablo 3.
I think this is fine. I think they learned things out of this, right? Because they've been pretty open to replying back at the community. And again, the community's split on wanting this or not wanting that. But I definitely do think Agron will learn from this. And if they do another seasonal thing, they'll apply this rule, right? For sure. There's no way they don't, unless they're stupid. Right?
Developers looked at Diablo 2, which was a genre-defining classic, and for some reason,
Diablo
they saw
2 is
everything as flawed
insane.
and to be fixed with their superior intellect and game design, which ended up being to essentially remove any RPG elements from the game and sacrifice them for action. And what resulted was one of the worst video game launches of all time. And in the case of Discovery, aside from nerfing the dungeon boosting, I would say just leave the leveling alone, leave the economy alone. It's been going fine for 20 years. I think people will be able to survive taking more than 3 days to level from 1 to 50. I think people will be able to survive not clearing a raid week 1. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'll get a lot of pushback from that in the comments, which is fine. This is a spot where we can disagree with stuff. Just please keep it.
No, I think you're
non-toxic.
right on
But
these.
if I had to guess, this pushback will be from people who stopped playing SOD over a month ago. You guys can say anything you want. I have the easy job. All I have to do is just point at the player base, or lack thereof. So I hope that Phase 4 will bring it back. But if you want to know my prediction, I think it'll be much like Phase 3. I think that there'll be big interest at first, but then there'll be a pretty big drop off because everything's just too fast and too many reasons to play have been removed. So yeah, rant over. Let's continue.
The recent chart and sub-count estimates that followed in its wake, and well, Season of Discovery came out, sub-count line goes up. It just works. There is clearly a huge demand for both vanilla content, as well as some changes being made to the game's base formats that people aren't really invested in.
Did I really want to talk about, fuck, dude. This was a big one, chat. You guys know what I'm going to say. Actually, I don't think I should have. I need to raid with Zara, chat.
Season of Discovery.
I really love MMO launches. I don't know about you guys, but there's just something about seeing this massive ball of players struggling to get out of the starting zone that's so universally memorable and fun.
Yeah.
I think honestly that's one of the main appeals of the genre. Even if they suck, the launch always stands out as a highlight, and I never regret playing it because it's just fun to get lost in this new world and just kind of figure out all the new stuff together.
Has also showed us that the player base has definitely changed by and large on certain topics too. Nowadays we have mega servers that can fit tens of thousands of players, not these smaller tight-knit communities that people would always go on about back in the day. Turns out on an MMO that people just want other people to play with. We have gold that's much easier to get and it's faster to level and so on. Though some of these things do make sense given it's a seasonal server and everything. Of course,
Yep, especially if you have massive gold and level increases, as it turns out. But yeah, again, how much is too much? Taking into consideration how fast the players are today, do we really need these on top of it? What is the ideal MMO? One that's beatable within 1 week of starting? Why start at level 1? Come on, just start us at 60.
Gold was
It just
too
starts at rank
much.
14. Starts with full best in slot. I really think that's been one of SOD's biggest issues is that they just failed at protecting the players from themselves. I have a video about this subject. In fact, I just posted it to the channel a few days ago, so yeah, check that out if you're interested in MMO design.
I'd also like to say I think Sunken Temple was going on too long, right, chat? Level 50 phase has been going for a long time. I think that there's a factor in that too. But that only became a thing because Agron took into feedback that the other phases were too short, so they made it longer. You know what I mean? So they're definitely learning, I think. I'd like to say
Trees are now
that.
raising the level cap to
It was
50, and
very
we'll see how
long
this plays
for
out.
sure.
At this point,
Well, I think we've seen how it plays out.
part of me does just want to get to 60 and see how our class's full toolkit is supposed to play with everything Blizzard's planned, rather than feeling as though some specs have bits missing just so we have something to get later on. But then when we're 60, we have to go back to raiding Molten Core, Nixia, BWL, and so on. And the existing level 60 raids, if I'm being honest, were not my favorite. Maybe we'll get the seasonal mastery changes in the game though, and they'll be a bit more interesting. I'll give them a go either way. At Blizzard though,
Oh, they'll definitely be buffed in some way. People at level 50 are doing more DPS than full next Ram's Fury Warriors. The power creep is insane,
Yeah,
so
I mean, dude, normal mobs in here had the equivalent HP of the Nomogon last boss. It's a lot of HP. They had to nerf Sunken Temple because nobody could kill the dream guy. I forgot his name. For sure, Molten Core is going to be a little bit more buffed.
unless they want these raids to feel like a stockade carry. Yeah, the health, damage, armor, probably mechanics are going to be a requirement. And that's probably a big reason why the level 60 phase is taking so long.
But they've got more than enough to do on the classic team, between getting Cataclysm in a state where it's working, as well as
Iranicus.
developing new stuff for Season of Discovery, and actively having to work on things such as class balancing on a regular basis. I would still like to see a standalone classic server that adds new content into the game one day. Season of Discovery is definitely...
I agree, and I like Season of Discovery. Hopefully this video doesn't give you the wrong impression. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't care, and I wouldn't talk about it. I do, it's been fun. But I think at this point, if you forced me on a desert island with one MMO, it would be original vanilla. A lot of that is nostalgia for sure, but there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why drawing nostalgic value from World of Warcraft specifically is stigmatized. I think that there's nothing wrong with loading up Mario on the NES, or cooking the same recipe that your mom did for you when you were a kid, or watching a movie you watched a lot as a kid. I don't see why you can't do the same with vanilla World of Warcraft, especially when it's proven itself in modern culture to be appealing time and time again. I don't know.
You
It's so funny.
can, for
I saw the
sure.
comments from people today of rose-colored goggles. It's like, you realize this game tripled subscription revenue, right? You've seen this chart, I'm sure. So exactly what point are you trying to make when you say rose-colored goggles to dismiss classic MMO design? Classic carried World of Warcraft during this time. I guess for me, I would definitely be more interested in a more grounded Classic Plus with no XP increases, no gold increases, and the old balance with maybe some tweaks here and there. So it's not just Fury Warriors as DPS, but still kind of keeping that charm and simplicity that the game has.
Good old
maybe just going for new
CBT.
stuff like high jaw that he's showing here, and bosses that are still difficult but yet pretty simple. Maybe on the level of Next Ramus in terms of complexity and challenge in the next raid tier, but obviously harder than Next Ramus do.
The closest we've got to a real Classic Plus experience so far, and given its success, I expect to see more to come in terms of modified vanilla content. But changing that commitment from seasonal to permanent is a big undertaking, and not without its own risks either. On seasonal servers, they can massively increase XP gain, give us Wrath of the Lich King and beyond abilities, and just make us all feel overpowered. And it's not, in many cases, how the game usually is with the pacing of vanilla at all. But we can just brush it off and say, yeah, but it's seasonal, so whatever, just have fun with it while it's here.
Yeah, but again, and I know that this video was put out when Season of Discovery was thriving, but this is where that philosophy gets you. People stop playing your game because you've removed reasons to play your game.
Season of Discovery have been as well received if it was presented as a full-on standalone Classic Plus server? Maybe, maybe not. But there are another group of players too, those who aren't on expansions, and those who don't really want all these changes to the original Classic format either, and those are the people still on Classic Era. In case you don't know, Classic Era were a bunch of servers made when vanilla was progressing onto TBC, and the idea was it was a place for people who prefer the vanilla version of the game to still have a home. And to this day, it's just vanilla that has received the Era treatment. TBC did not get Era servers, and there appears to be no plans for Wrath either, and time is running out. And at first glance, it's not hard to see why. Classic Era was a disaster when it first came out. The servers were dead, and not in an exaggerated sense either. They were dead. There would be
Yeah, it was sad. I think a part of the reason for this was Blizzard putting out a $40 charge on copying your character at first. Well, let's see if he mentions this, but yeah, at least when BC Classic was fresh, it was a ghost town. But it was expected at the same time, especially if you're going to charge people $40 to carry your character over. That's absolutely ridiculous. Small indie game dev, by the way.
a handful of people online at times had 0 items on, but it's grown over time. People have gone back to their old characters or sought to re-level in the old world without any new additions.
I'm one of those people, actually. I've rolled on the recent community fresh run on Deviant Delight for the US. If you're an EU player, there's apparently one on Zandalar Tribe. I think at this point, the itch for vanilla is big enough.
Chat, which one's bigger, EU or NA? Man, I had so many people tell me to play, but I couldn't. Chat. I've just been doing so much classic, I think. Yeah, it's been a lot of classic. SOD is a little bit different in classic, so I'm playing it.
Were to do an official fresh server, it would see moderate success. Nothing like the 2019 launch. I'd be surprised if they were able to reach that
If I
level.
play, I feel like I want to play EU because EU has a lot, you know? And I want to go where that big boom is. Remember that starting thing I showed on the paint where there's a bunch of people running around? I want to see that.
Again, but moderate success. I think that maybe every 3 to 5 years is a sweet spot to where this itch starts to come back for most people. But my guess is that they're probably going to wait until Discovery concludes, and I think that would be best as to not splinter the player base so much.
Yeah.
Not a huge population, to be honest, but it is consistent at least. And most importantly is that Era ended up serving its purpose, being a home for those who want a no changes classic. It just took a while for people to start missing it enough. And you know what? Hardcore servers would have never happened if Classic Era didn't exist. By the time...
Yep, true. And I'm going to be a hipster here. I did hardcore runs before it was cool. No, seriously, people can vouch for me. I started doing them in the beta of Classic before it was even released in 2019, which didn't have high stakes, of course, because it was a beta and everything was going to be wiped anyway. But then, and also a little bit before BC came out, I was recording a run, and I was going to make it into this mini
Chat, we
series
have a secret jutsu about. Never mind.
with full RP narration. I was going to have it voiced over by Wayne June, who did the narration for the Darkest Dungeon. I made it to about level 30, and that's when they announced that they're bringing the level boost to BC, and I kind of nerd raged, as you know. But yeah, hardcore actually ended up being what brought me back when the official servers launched in August of last year. That took me out of my hiatus.
And the hardcore scene started to get really
Hardcore's
popular.
really
We were in
fun.
Wrath of the Lich King. Would people still have wanted to go back and play a hardcore game mode on Wrath servers with all the class and open world changes? A few perhaps, but it was that legacy of having challenging vanilla leveling that made
Go
people
on.
want to
I don't
go
know if I can talk about it. There's a secret jutsu, chat, okay? There's a secret jutsu, and you guys will hear about it later.
back and undertake the challenge. And hardcore ended up being a pretty huge deal for a good few months. There's still a scene for it, of course. It's not like it's ever too late to start. And one day it'll probably have a resurgence because it's just always going to be there. And I've seen the odd sentiment here and there start to crop up about people missing TBC as well now. We're getting to that point where time has now gone by, but unlike vanilla, they can't go back. TBC's gone. If a big piece of classic is re-releasing and preserving older expansion experiences, why are we once again leaving them in the past? That doesn't quite add up to me. And Wrath is soon to get the same treatment in having no Era realms. By the way, Ice Crown Citadel came out over 5 months ago and still has about 175,000 active raiders. If 10% of those people carried onto a Wrath Era server, it would have the same raiding population as Classic Era. And I don't know whether Blizzard doesn't want another hosting dead server situation, it being logistically difficult to offer different expansions or whatever it is, but it seems as only vanilla is the expansion, or version of the game I should say, that's carrying on and on. And no, I don't think segmenting the player base is an issue here. These Era servers are a niche thing to begin with, and for Blizzard, a sub is a sub. You might spend different about.
I think that maybe a good middle ground would be official reruns of what we've seen so far in the 2019 line. I think he's right. Just enough time has to pass for people to get the itch to play all of these different versions. So
I thought right after this, they were just going to let us vote what next expansion we get. I did not think they would do Kata again. But I'm kind of glad. I'm liking Kata a lot.
you know, let's say Cataclysm is the end, which who knows if it is, but just using this as an example. But once it ends, after a few months, fresh vanilla servers are launched, and from there they follow the path of 2019 to today to going through each expansion, maybe speeding up the cadence to where this happens every few years or so.
I feel like it's gonna happen. Fuck, I don't know, man. I think people really want Panda. And then if we get Panda, people are really gonna want Draenor. And if we get Draenor, people are gonna really want Legion. I don't know if anyone wants this too. I hope not. At what point do they stop, chat? They gotta stop at a certain point and say, all right, guys, community vote. Who wants this one or this one or this one? And then they vote and go do that, right? I think that's the right play.
Classic what Savix
I don't know, bro. Dude, I just want a new WoW version that has everything here. If the new one was good, we would all never go back to the old one, right? Fuck, dude, they gotta do something. Yo, Hen, thank you for the 17, man.
No, let me know what you think about that.
Lots of time in different games doing different things, but somebody who subbed for Plunderstorm and somebody who raids next 40 on Classic Era are both subscribers. Overall though, despite me thinking as though the first 3 versions of WoW felt like a trilogy, keeping on releasing future expansions is kind of the point of Classic in the first place in many ways. I reckon we get to Legion eventually, but I'm sure there is a longer term plan because at the end of the day, we're revisiting expansions at a faster pace than they're releasing. And over time, I think we're gonna keep speeding up. Classic Era...
I really wonder how far they'll go. Will we see a BFA Classic? I don't know. Cataclysm I can see people wanting to revisit again, but I haven't seen anybody say, oh, I really miss Gathering Azurite.
Oh, yeah, I don't know, guys.
My original guess was that they would have ended with Wrath since that's sort of the original trilogy, Vanilla BC and Wrath, but I'm thinking Legion would probably be the end now at this point, but who knows? If there's money to be earned, they'll go as far as people want to go, honestly. I think it really just depends on how Cataclysm does, if they'll do Mists. But if you force me to guess right now, because we saw Cataclysm, yeah, we'll probably see Mists.
Is an idea which
I think we'll see Mists
eventually, and it's a bit of a shame to not see it for TBC or Wrath. I wouldn't play them personally. I mean, even for Classic Era, outside of Hardcore, I didn't really play it, but I think there would be a niche player base for them. I hope Season of Discovery and Hardcore as an alternative game mode have both made big impressions on Blizzard. Vanilla is the game with the biggest reach by a huge amount. It's the only pre-expansion.
Dude, Vanilla's so good, but fuck, I want a little bit of changes, chat. Is that too much?
Version of World.
I don't want another hashtag no changes relaunch.
Of Warcraft, and
fuck
as such we
that,
can
man.
content which builds on what exists rather than releasing expansions and replacing everything. Though I am still hoping for something more permanent one day, but seasonal is a great testing grounds to see what works, and I've been super happy with it so far. I think given all the choices we have at the moment, Classic is doing just fine though, and outside of error servers not existing for old expansions being a bit of a shame, the future of Classic is looking very interesting. But those are just my thoughts at the moment and a few bits and pieces which I felt like talking about today. If you made it to the end, let me know what you think about the overall state of Classic in the comments down below, and thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Very soon.
By the way, I did not know this was a video of Massey's reacting to, really. But I started the video, so I thought it was respectful to finish it.
I think it's fascinating looking at where we were and where we are now. From no changes to Druids with Wind Fury and Hunters with Blessing of Kings and level boosts and WoW tokens. It kind of makes you wonder what things will look like in 5 years from now. Who knows, maybe we will be playing BFA Classic. So we can heal Azeroth's wounds, champion. Go do yourself a favor and subscribe to Willie. He is one of my favorite channels on here. I'm sure we'll revisit more of this stuff in the future because I think he always has interesting things to say
the video
about the games, and I definitely appreciate the patient and nuanced way that he has in delivering it. Let me know what you think about all of this, but aside from that, like the video if you liked it, because I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
That was a good video. That was a good video. Great topic to go over.